So I'm Dan Gibbons. I'm the CEO of the City Club, and first of all, I just want to welcome you, mayors especially, to Chicago, and welcome to Chicago. Welcome to City Club. We're so proud of our city. We're proud of City Club. We're proud of, our friends and members who we think are just some of the best people in the country, but certainly in Chicago. So welcome to City Club. So we have our number of our board of governors. Our chair, Jackie Robinson-Ivy, is here. Chair Jackie Robinson-Ivy, thank you, and Omar Dagestani, and our team, and a whole host of members that we're proud to be able to share with you all, and for you to meet them as you did a little bit. And what we're doing here during convention week as a nonprofit, unbiased, nonpartisan club, City Club is really gathering all sorts of people like you all that are in town to share some experiences of what you're seeing in your cities, and perhaps we can learn from them in Chicago. And maybe while you're here, we could show off a little bit about Chicago that we're so excited to do. And part of that is here at the Firehouse. One of our favorite restaurants. We're here in the Blue Room, aptly named. Even though we're not partisan, it's not the Red Room. I'll just say that. We've got our microphones provided by Shure, a Chicago company. We've got some great, women-owned and minority-owned businesses that we're featuring. And I know you all, in reading about your cities, that those are all issues and people and leaders that you tend to highlight as well. So I think we're just going to have a nice, great conversation. I'm not going to pull any curveballs on you, and we're just excited to have you here. We're turning this into a podcast that we'll be able to share with you, and you can share back into your cities and your outlets, and then we're also going to share with WVON, the radio station that locally here in Chicago, that is our partner in this as well. So we just came from the U.S. Conference of Mayors lunch, which all of you were at. It was great. Another great partner for us in this endeavor for this week. And what I'd like to do is welcome you and ask each of you mayors to introduce yourselves, and then we'll turn it into a bit of a conversation. Does that sound good? And to our audience, our members, I believe we even have another mayor or so in the crowd. You're welcome. We're a casual group. We always like to have question and answer. So if anyone does have a burning question, let us know, and a little bit later in the conversation, we can either invite you up to speak in one of the microphones and ask your question, or it's small enough of a group, we can raise your hand and hopefully capture it on the audio. So welcome to City Club. Welcome to Chicago. Actually, I'm going to move to my left. Mayor Smiley was the one who really helped us put this together with Omar and a couple of friends of ours, and we appreciate that. And I'm also going to ask you to speak into your microphones, as I'm not doing, so I'm going to do a little better job. Mayor Smiley, will you kick us off?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I think part of the idea of this group was that Mayor Greenberg and Mayor Jones and I, we all were elected at the same time. We're all in our first term, and we met through a Bloomberg program at Harvard for new mayors, and so an opportunity to reflect on our first year of service. I'm the mayor of Providence, Rhode Island, the capital city of the state of Rhode Island, and a place that I'm very proud to have a chance to represent. But I'm also a native Chicagoan, so it's been a delight to be back home again. The city looks great. You should be really proud of how Chicago is showing itself to the world. Everyone that we've talked to already is having a terrific experience, and I already knew Chicago was great, but there's a lot of people here for the first time, I think, and they're going to get a chance to experience everything that the Windy City has to offer. So in addition to being in my first term, I have a background in government and in politics. So prior to getting elected, I was the chief of staff to our governor at the time, Gina Raimondo, who's now the U.S. Commerce Secretary, and had a couple other significant roles in both city and state government before that. So this is my first time in elected office, but long time in government, and I'm particularly passionate about the power of local government and of mayors to actually make changes that make a difference in people's lives, which is why I ran, why I'm so excited to serve. Everything from little things like picking up people's garbage and filling potholes to big things about how we educate their children and making sure that they've got a safe and affordable place to call home. we have the privilege of being able to make decisions every day that make a real meaningful, tangible, and almost immediate effect on people's lives.
And perhaps we'll get into how the little things are the big things. As I've learned in my experience, and mayors know the little things are the big things, right? Thank you for that. Mayor Jones, tell us a little bit about yourself.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity. The mayors know you never want to go after Mayor Smiley, but I will. I'll do my best. I'm Philip Jones. I'm the mayor of the city of Newport News, Virginia. It's a city that I grew up in. My parents were both Air Force pilots, and I speak into it, but I joined the Marine Corps. So very heavy military, heavy transient town. We're known for building the world's best aircraft carriers. So we'll talk about power projection, talk about great power conflict, but I love my city. My parents are still there. Was married 2 months ago, so my wife is there now. So really proud of Newport News in my first term as well, and excited to talk about all things shipbuilding, which is like my true passion, as well as a lot of innovation. I'm the innovation mayor. Before I became mayor, I spent about a decade in the Marine Corps, so didn't have any political sort of skill set, but the Marine Corps, we find a way to win. And so youngest mayor in Virginia, I'm really excited to be here.
Great. Well, thank you for your service. First of all, we all appreciate that, and appreciate all of your service. Public service is a service, but Marine Corps is a pretty, that is a tough act to follow here, but I know that Mayor Greenberg has some great things to share with us, and we also welcome you, Mayor.
Well, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be in Chicago. It's great to be here this week at the Democratic Convention with my wife and my son, and just getting involved in the whole effort this week is really inspiring. It's inspiring as a mayor, but also just inspiring as an American to see people coming together with excitement, that are excited about our future. That's what public service, I think, is all about, and that's why I got involved in running for mayor. Unlike Mayor Smiley, I'm new to public service. I was in the private sector first. I helped build and launch a hotel company, 21C Museum Hotels. We actually have...
We've heard of it.
Yeah, have one here in Chicago. We had the fortune or misfortune of opening up a hotel in Chicago about 3 weeks before COVID hit. So that was quite an adventure. But this is a wonderful city. My wife has family here, so I've been coming here for a long time. I love cities, and that's why I ran for mayor, is because I love our city of Louisville, Kentucky. It's a great place that's home to the Kentucky Derby. It's home to Louisville Slugger. We've got great parks. We are a river city. We have a growing economy, wonderful people, great hospitality. But like Mayor Jones and Mayor Smiley and many of the other mayors that were just at the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting that we came from, we all are facing some challenges. We're all facing challenges of violent crime. We're all facing challenges, the need for more affordable housing. We're all facing the need that we need to spend more in infrastructure. We need to do a better job of public education for our kids, and we all want to start that education earlier. We all want to create good paying jobs close to home. And so that's why, for me, this is an incredibly exciting time to be mayor. It's a great honor. It's a great privilege. It's also a huge responsibility. And I'm sure my friends here agree with that. This is the most challenging thing we've all ever done. It's also the most rewarding, because we can truly see the progress, even in our short year and a half in office, that each of us are making in our city. And that's why I love being mayor so much.
Great. And I love the diversity of these backgrounds and stories of how you got there. And also what City Club is doing is really trying to engage this next generation of leaders. So perhaps some of your stories will help encourage that and people to get into public service, whichever path they take, similar to all you all have. So we can go in 100 directions. Earlier today, I think it was Mayor Benjamin Steve. So we actually had Mayor Lander in this chair this morning. Of course, talking a lot about being mayor, and he's the infrastructure czar for the White House, and he just keeps going back to being mayor. Mayors kind of run the world, right? I think he said, it was either Mayor Landry or Mayor Benjamin said today, there are three parties in the United States: Democrats, Republicans, and mayors. Can somebody explain that to me?
So I can take this one. So in Virginia, at least for mayors, we actually run nonpartisan. So you can affiliate with a party, but it's nonpartisan. And so as someone who leans left, I still was able to garner about 75% of the Republican vote. And what I did was, whenever I talked to individuals, I said, listen, when I was in the Marine Corps, I took an oath to the Constitution, not to a political party. And I said, my job as mayor is to represent everyone, right? Left, right, those who voted for me, those who didn't vote me, because at the end of the day, I think government should be accountable. It should be transparent and also have the teeth, the agency to get things done. I think that mayor is unique in which, there's no caucus of mayors. There's no voting I have to do. Like, things just get done from the mayor's office. And that's why I think people go to their mayors to get things done. They don't want to hear, well, technically I don't control that. They just want things to be done.
Yeah, and I think it's also a place that's outside of the beltway of Washington, D.C. And so in America, so much of the partisanship is focused around a few issues that really, I think, are meant to divide us more than unite us. And what we're doing as mayors is making people's lives better every day. So whether it's dealing with enormous problems like gun violence, or as Mayor Smiley was talking about earlier, dealing with picking up the trash and filling potholes, those are not partisan issues in the traditional sense. And most everybody just wants a well-run government that helps them do the things that they want to do for themselves and their family. And it doesn't matter. In fact, in Louisville, I ran as a Democrat in a partisan election. I am a proud Democrat, but the state just recently changed the law. And so when I run for re-election, I'll be running in a nonpartisan election. And I think that's more common than not these days in mayors because...
Interesting. It's just happening. I mean, that happened in Chicago in, I think it was 95. John Dunn will probably be able to tell me. 95, it changed because you're basically, for so many years, you're not going to run as a Republican in a city like Chicago. It's just not the makeup of... So it did not make sense. And I'm interesting to hear that both cities have done that. Mayor Smiley, do you belong to the same party?
Yeah, I'm a Democrat, and I run in a Democratic primary. It's a partisan race, and Rhode Island is a heavily Democratic state. But
so are you more of a Democrat or more of a mayor party?
Well, I'm both. I think I can be both. I'm a proud Democrat, to be sure. But I think we're all on the advisory committee, right?
I just got.
Yes, Phillips, we are soon all to be members of the advisory committee of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I know in the audience we've got a member of the Board of Trustees, the mayor of New Bedford, Massachusetts, John Mitchell, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and USCM is truly bipartisan. Yep. And you heard it at the press conference today. They're talking about a housing agenda for the next administration. And while I'll sit here and say I hope that's a Harris-Walz administration, we're presenting that to both parties, and we have mayors of both parties. And we have an agenda that really doesn't rely on party. Every city, whether it's a Democratic city or a Republican city, is dealing with housing and homelessness. Every city is dealing with mostly the same issues. It manifests itself a little bit differently. We talk about it a little bit differently, but we have so much in common. And in my experience, in my first year and a half in office, is I don't even know what party some of my friend mayors are in.
That's right.
It just doesn't come up. It's not on our name badge. And every once in a while, I could kind of like, oh, you're a Republican? I had no idea. It's like we've worked together. We sat in panels together and things. And that's what I think there's three-party things is because we don't really care. Are you effective or are you not? Are you getting, stuff done or are you not? Because it's not, I don't know, I speak for myself. I think I speak for all three of us. I look particularly at the U.S. Congress and the bickering and the incentive to just say something outrageous to try to get yourself on either MSNBC or Fox News. And I don't think mayors are wired that way. Like that's not motivating to me. That's not why I wake up and want to go to work in the morning. And I don't think that's true for any of us.
We're measured on results. We're measured on, can people tell that the city is a better place each day or each year, each term, however you're looking at it. That's how we're measured. And so people need to see tangible results. And that's what I think all of us are focused on.
So let's talk about that. You're all first term, right? You all met a week before or a week after your election. Is that right?
Basically, yeah.
So, all right, I have a couple of questions on that because I heard there's a story behind it. But all right, you're a year and a half in. What was your first? Let's start with you, Mayor. What was your first initiative coming out of the gates to prove to people you're there to get the job done? And you guys got a couple minutes to think about it. But what was the first thing you got sworn in? You put your hand on that Bible. You put your hand up, and you got to your office. What'd you do?
Well, we did a few things right from the get-go to make it clear that our administration wants to move the city in a new direction. We had not your traditional inauguration. We opened up Metro Hall to let everyone come in. We focused on transparency and being very clear with everything we're going to be doing is out in the public. And really, the bulk of my first year was spent focused on the key plans for the issues that I ran on that are the biggest issues for the city. And that's reducing violent crime. We have far too much gun violence in Louisville, building more affordable housing, creating more jobs, and then revitalizing downtown. And a fifth one also, working to make universal pre-K a reality. So much of the first year was focused on not just some plans that are going to sit on a shelf, but actionable plans that were very clear what the public are, what we're doing to make steps along the way, how long it's going to take to achieve certain things, where we've made mistakes, being clear about that, pivoting, and then going in a new direction to achieve the same goal. And so now we're just focused on executing those plans. And the remainder of my first term, and probably as long as I'm mayor, will be focused on executing those plans. Of course, new things will happen. We'll continue to. But we have also been focused on getting things done. So parks, for example, we're finally now a year and a half in. We're starting to open up some of the great new parks that my administration has heavily invested in. There's been all of our cities need better and improved infrastructure. I was thrilled when a month ago we were finally able to start work on a project that our city had been talking about, converting a one-way to two-way street for 14 years. We finally got it done. So making, not just talking about things, but people want to see things happening. That's what I'm very focused on, is showing people how their lives are going to be better, how their neighborhoods are going to be safer, cleaner, greener, more energetic because of what our administration's doing.
Great. So far, so good.
So far, so good.
It sounds like it. Good. Mayor Smiley.
Don't get me wrong. There have been some challenging days.
Oh, yeah, and I can't promise there won't be more to
But
come.
overall, we are making positive progress towards our goals.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit more, maybe a little bit less sweeping than some of Craig's plans. I mean, I find that it was actually excellent for me to learn how to do politics in Chicago, because there's a lot of analogies in Providence. Politics in Providence is a brass-knuckled fight, and unlike Chicago, we don't have a professional sports team, and so politics is our professional sport. And there's also a lot of.
It's funny though, we have 6 professional sports teams, and I would say that politics is still our sport.
Exactly.
So,
but there's a lot of, and it's related to this. There's a lot of cynicism. There's a lot of lack of confidence that government can actually get anything done. And we're all a little bit of a reflection of who came before us, or at least the temperament of our electorate, of what they're looking for. And I ran on a decided quality of life, just run the city better platform. And one of the things that had kind of gotten out of control was quality of life crimes. Our violent crime statistics were actually quite good, but there was a sense that the city was getting lawless. And it's like, they talk about victimless crimes, but really the community is the victim. It's not victimless. And so we had, as a specific example, we had this problem. I don't know if it's true in Chicago, but it was up and down the East Coast with illegal ATVs and dirt bikes, where these kids would take over the intersections and ride out in packs. And it gave this sort of Mad Max vibe to, and it freaks people out. And so, I put a sustained focus on that at the very, very beginning. And by the middle of this,
well, or we can. I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to know exactly what you did.
Yeah,
because that is it. And here, this is perfect example of why we're having these conversations. That happens in all sorts of cities, and there need to be solutions.
I was in D.C. not too long ago, and I saw them again, and it's like, you kind of forget the absence of a thing, and I thought, oh yeah, I remember how bad this was, because it's not like that anymore.
Great.
And so we put together a special police task force that was investigative focused, as opposed to, there's really no safe way to pull these guys over once they're out on the roads. And so largely through social media, we found out that they were meeting up online, and they were coordinating their ride-outs and such, and then we were getting warrants, and we also found it's an urban environment if you've never been to Providence. And so one guy would have a garage or a storage unit, and there'd be 10 bikes in there. And because they were all keeping them together. It was a pretty tight-knit community. And it requires constant attention, and it gets worse kind of every summer. It comes back a little bit, but it is nothing like it was. And it was a very tangible deliverable in my first 6 months. By that first summer, we had changed the perspective entirely, and people had that, and some of that cynicism went away a little bit. They're like, oh, maybe they can actually solve some of these problems. Maybe the new administration can actually do some of these things. And then from there, we moved on to graffiti, and now we're working on these quality of life crimes so that people choose Providence. The largest source of incoming new residents are either recent arrivals or immigrants, of which we've got a growing and proud Latino community. But then we have a lot of people who moved to Providence from Boston or New York primarily. And they are leaving Boston and New York because they still want to live in a city. They still want diversity. They still want cultural amenities, but they don't want it to hurt like it hurts to live in New York, right? It's a little bit less expensive. And so like that's the environment and culture and quality of life that we need to deliver, because that's why they're choosing us. Like they could have had all of that if they stayed in Brooklyn, but they left. And so we want to make sure that we're offering something a little bit differently. And so that's what I prioritized early on. That's how I was able to deliver an early win early on. And I do think that that's like, you can't deny that. We all want to keep doing this job. And so we have to put results on the board. And so that's where I started.
And somebody mentioned it, again, may have been Mayor Landry, that you really have to do some of the more difficult things right out of the gates. Did you find that in thinking a little bit long term when you start out, do you need to do some of the difficult things perhaps so that
yes, well, yeah, but I'll put an asterisk on Mayor Landry's comment, which is there are some things you need to do right out of the gate. In my case, I don't know about you guys, I have term limits. So I can only
Let's real quick. Do you know term limits? Okay.
Yeah, 2 terms.
Louisville, 2 terms. Yeah. Okay.
So
2 terms for you.
I have 2 terms.
Okay,
so there's also a second set of problems that you put on the year 5 list, and that's part of the reality too.
Okay.
The things you know that are the right thing to do, but you don't get to keep doing the job if you do them right out of the gate.
You get the advice often to do the tough things first, and that's. I think I tried to do that. I think both mayors here tried to do that. Although it's a little bit easier said than done because you're still figuring out, what the role of mayor is. You also want to have the right information before you make tough decisions. And so I actually find now in my second year in office, I am better at making the tough decisions now than even I was right away because I have so much more information, such a better insight, not just into what government is and who we are, but also the city. The learning curve is incredibly steep, and I've loved learning every day, and I hope I continue learning and plan to continue learning every day for as long as I'm in this job. But that helps you make better decisions.
That's a great point. And I assume, again, with your different paths to getting to mayor, you were informed differently along the way. Some things you may have just read in the newspaper, whereas if you're on city council, you were right in the middle of these decisions. So very interesting. A great point about learning once you get in. But let's go back to day one. Mayor Jones, what was the first thing you did when you got into office?
So I ran for mayor because I love my city, and there were 3 members of city council that were going to run, and I ran on this hope and change sort of platform. I heard it worked out for someone else. Let's do, let's do hope and change. Let's be the hope and change candidate.
I think he's a Chicago guy.
Yeah, I've heard something about that. So I came into office. I had this 100-day plan. We were going to be innovation, and basically day one of me being mayor. So this is January 6th. This is a Friday, and I was going to swing.
Wait, what day was it?
It's January 6th of 23? Yeah, 23 for us. And I was going to take the oath of office 3 or 4 days later. My phone rang, and these guys know what happened, but we had the first school shooting of the year, basically day -1 for me. It was the 6-year-old that shot his teacher. And so immediately, like, all my plans went out the window. And I'm not sure how it is in different states, but in Virginia, the mayor does not control the school board or does the schools. The school board is independently elected. So, I fund the school system, but the school board basically runs the day-to-day operations of it through a superintendent. And so very quickly, I'm on CNN and I become the sort of education mayor, which is not my background at all. But what I realized that my city needed a comforter in chief in that moment. And everyone that reached out, especially these 2, which I appreciate, everyone reached out and said, we see you, you're doing a pretty good job. And so very quickly, I became the gun violence mayor, right? How can we reduce gun violence in our city? And so I gave my very first state of the city, and I said, I promise you that we will have a 15% reduction year over year of gun violence and homicides, or I will resign. And I said that on camera.
Wow, that's bold.
In my first state of the city. And I will tell you, 2 weeks ago, we did a full-blown press conference. We had a 35% reduction in homicides, and it was.
I get to use my first applause button.
And I told my police chief, I was like, this is not one person. This is everyone on deck. This is our community leaders, our Boys and Girls Club, our state house, our governor, who's a Republican. It doesn't matter. It's everyone coming together saying, how can we invest in the next generation? How can we get these guns off the streets? And so I had all these ideas, and very quickly I'm today was the first day of school. And I felt bad that, I wasn't able to be there, but I am the gun violence mayor and the education mayor.
I think gun violence is a great example of sort of encapsulating what the role of mayor is all about, because people in the city want the mayor to do everything and to hold mayor accountable for everything, get everything done. So in Mayor Jones's case, they probably thought you run the schools, even though you don't in that case. They want you to solve gun violence and do all these other things. And gun violence is such a complicated, tricky issue. For example, in Louisville, we are so focused on trying to reduce the amount of violent crime. And there are things that we want to do, and then state law prohibits you from doing them. Federal law prohibits you from doing things that can make a difference. That's one of the most frustrating things, is when you want to do more and there's a state or federal law that preempts you, which seems to be happening more and more. I think the more all of us mayors are in this job, we're focused on letting local people make local decisions, because we know that each city is different, and we have different ways that we could handle these. But I know there are things that we could do to reduce the amount of gun violence in Louisville quicker that we're not allowed to. But as mayor, you can't let that stop you. You have to find the other 1,400 things to do to deal with both long and short-term solutions, because that's a top priority for all of us.
And I do want to give a special thank you to Secretary Buttigieg, because after that happened, I did my CNN interview and my phone rang and it was him. And he said, listen, saw the interview, you did well. And I said, hey, and he's like, can I help? And I'm like, hey, everyone thinks like that I'm in charge of the schools, and I'm not. He's like, your job as mayor is like, you're in charge of it all.
Yeah.
He's like, whether or not it's like you directly, he's like, it's on you. And he's like, you're doing a good job. Like, we're proud of you. And so I really appreciate him just calling and saying we see you, and like, don't worry, like, you've got it.
If I could tell one fun first-year mayoral learning that reminds me of is when you're mayor, people somehow always seem to get your cell phone number. And so you're getting calls often, you're getting texts often. And so I have basically stopped answering calls unless I know who the phone number is. Well, early on in my term, I too got a call that I didn't answer because I didn't know the number. Hear my voicemail. It happened to be Secretary Buttigieg. So I now have a new rule, is I don't answer phone calls that I don't know the number from, unless it's a 202 area code, because it might be a cabinet secretary calling to talk about working together or an issue like that. So that's just a fun little anecdote from being mayor for the first time.
That's great. And we just saw him a few minutes ago. What I love about this all is the camaraderie among mayors. And I think that was Mayor Pete calling you, right? Yep. I mean, it was Mayor Pete. You can't get away from being mayor, and you're still learning that. I don't know what it's like. I've worked for one. I understand how it is, but it's so clear to me that any mayor that we talk to, you're never gonna shed that, right? And Mayor Pete and that camaraderie, he's come through the U.S. Conference of Mayors over so many years. When he was the mayor of South Bend, we see this camaraderie among you all. That's really a neat thing, right? And I did actually hear a story about how you all met, because I think it was days into your election or post-election. Who wants to take that? I'd love to hear a little more about
I think
a few days in
the White House story.
The White House story, that house.
I'll briefly talk about it. So we all win our elections, and I think the White House called maybe a month. I forget when they called, but they invited maybe 13 or 14 mayors to come to the White House to meet the cabinet secretaries and then ultimately to meet the president. And everyone was allowed to bring one person. So some people brought spouses, some brought chief of staff, brought my girlfriend at the time. And I told all the mayors, like, hey, I'm going to propose.
Wait, that's a move.
Yeah.
So I meet these guys. I meet all the mayors. I said, listen, I'm going to propose. Don't tell her. But like, it's so everyone throughout the day is asking me, like, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? So then we get to meet the president. We're all in the Oval for about an hour or so. And it was life-changing experience. And then afterwards, they're like, hey, Mayor Jones, you got one more press interview. And everyone's smiling, giving me the nod. And then we were able to, get on one knee and do that. But it was just good because they were like part of the story forever. And then just seeing them again at the White House for the mayors, like, winter dinner.
USCM.
Yeah, exactly. It's just they are always involved in important things in my life, and I appreciate the friendship.
Can I complain about the epilogue to this story, which is his wedding announcement, or his wedding announcement, or the thing gets written about in the New York Times, in the Sunday Style section. Beautiful write-up.
He does have good style.
Bride and groom look great. Perfect wedding. No mention of his colleague mayors as part of this story. We got totally shut out by the New York Times. I texted him. I'm like, what the heck? Right. What did it killed you? Said Mayor Smiley and Mayor Greenberg were there when it happened.
A great day.
Oh, that sounds like fun, and I love that you all. You could almost do the road show. You got to go around and learn from other cities, right? Because there's so many ways that everybody can kind of help each other. So all right, we've hit on a number of things. Your first days in office. Now let's assume that, and I know one of you is not term limited, but let's assume we're fast forwarding to 8 years, and let's talk practical mayor talk now. Not too big.
Yep.
What have you accomplished in this 8 years from now, and you're on your way onto something next, which, by the way, maybe we could talk about that too, because I imagine all of you are onto something else eventually. What does end day 8 years look like, and what were you able to accomplish?
Well, for me, I hope it's that Louisville, like Newport News, has significantly reduced its rate of gun violence, that we've built 15, 20, 30,000 new units of affordable housing, that universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds is a reality, that our downtown has thousands of new people living in it, that we've revitalized a new downtown park called the Belvedere that overlooks the Ohio River, that is bringing people together from around the entire community, and that our downtown is thriving once again. It's a place where people are not fearful of going to, but people want to go to because it's the most energetic, unique, thriving, cleanest, greenest neighborhood in the entire city. To me, I know some of those are large aspirations, but that's why I ran for mayor. I had a great life in the private sector. I think people can do a lot of good things for their communities, for their companies, for their families through the private sector. But I wanted to be mayor of Louisville because I wanted to make transformative change. And so we're swinging for the fences. We're going to keep at it. And if we don't get all the way there, but we get a good portion of the way there, I think Louisville will still be a far better place. And that's something that I will be proud of for the rest of my life.
Great. And let's reverse now to current day. Come back. Is there building going on, and is there development underway? Tell us the current state of Louisville and growth, and specifically with regards to actual building construction and housing and
So our infrastructure work across the city, whether it's parks, roads, new pools, new libraries, all of that is underway, and that's under construction right now and going really well. On the private sector, with respect to building more housing downtown, to the new entertainment venues and all of those types of private sector developments, we're getting really close for the first time. So plans are underway, projects are getting done. One of our biggest challenge, again, none of us mayors can control the interest rates. I guarantee you that if interest rates went down a point or a point and a half, there would be 5 new cranes in the sky in a matter of months. But you can't let that stop you. You still have to find a way to get these projects going. So I'd say we're about 3 to 5 months away from more cranes in the air, but that's because just development takes a long time, but we're getting incredibly close based on some things that we started a year ago.
Great to hear. Mayor Smiley, 8 years from day one.
Yeah.
Very good at math.
So, I think all of us, we bring talents and skills to the table, but we are also mayors at a certain period of time, and we can't control that. But I think the opportunity for Providence at this moment in time, it's true from some other cities, but I want us to be the poster child for post-pandemic growth. Big little cities, second-tier cities like Providence are positioned for extraordinary growth. Remote work has actually been very good for us. If you have a Boston or New York-based job, you should absolutely live in Providence now. If you need to be in the office once a week, once a month, or not at all, the urban amenities, real arts and culture, real diversity, walkable quality of life that you can get in Providence is unlike what you can get in the bigger cities. And you don't need to be there anymore because your job isn't based there anymore. And so what I hope to be able to do is to say that I ushered in a period of extraordinary growth for our city that maintains that quality of life, that takes advantage of this moment in time, and that has an inflow of new residents, and that we become, that kind of next great smaller city, whether that in your mind's eye, if that's Portland or what Austin was years ago. Like, I think that can be Providence. And the kind of other than interest rates, maybe the sort of exterior conditions are just right for us. And we have done well through the pandemic. We are thriving in that way. And we always end up comparing ourselves to our neighbors. In Connecticut, for example, the cities in Connecticut don't really have a middle class. There's rich folks and then there's low income residents. There is no middle class in most Connecticut cities. We still have income diversity in our city. And so it's really important that we maintain that. Housing is part of the solution to that problem. There's also a fair amount of upskilling that has to happen. We've got not enough levels of either higher education or post-high school credentialing that needs to happen. But we can be that next great second-tier big little city in America, and that's what I hope to have been a part of.
And
there's nothing second tier about any of our cities, Brett.
But size-wise, right? So we're 200,000 people. Yeah. At its peak, right at the end of World War II, Providence had 250,000 people. Yeah. Landmass is the same. And I was talking to a member of the board before we started here. What's interesting that has changed, and for a couple former public servants who are in the audience, when we would have planning meetings, zoning board meetings, I think what most of us are used to is 20 people signing up on the no column in the public comment section and no one on the yes column. We now have people signing up on the yes column, and it's not their development. And it's primarily younger people. It's younger professionals who don't like having to have 3 roommates because they make $75,000 a year and they should be able to either buy their first home or have their own apartment, but they can't afford that right now. And that is a supply problem. And we have this, people are familiar with the acronym NIMBY, not in my backyard. We have an actual organized YIMBY group, yes, in my backyard. And the whole perspective around growth and development has changed. And we by state law, have to update our zoning regulations once every decade. We're doing that right now, and we're doing widespread, across the board upzoning in our city, and it has been met with largely support and almost no opposition. That is, I'd love to take credit for that sea change in temperament. That's not me. That is the people speaking that say, we like it, we want to be here, we want to be able to stay here, and so we need housing options to do that.
It's great. I hope you'll be able to take a moment with Alderman Pat Dowell after the conversation, who's the alderman of this ward, who would love to have that flux into the yes in my backyard, as she has been so thoughtful about this neighborhood in particular of Chicago. Thank you for being here, Alderman Dowell, because we're learning from different cities, and there are some lessons that hopefully that they'll be able to learn also from Chicago. So, Mayor Jones, tell us about final day. What are you looking back on? What have you done?
I think Mayor Smiley hit it, the nail right on the head. I think that I've never heard the term big little city, but now I'm going to start saying that. So we're about the exact same size, 190,000 individuals. But you've heard of Providence, you haven't heard of Newport News, right? And so I think what that speaks to is identity crisis. And I've always said when I was running, I said the city's at an inflection point, right? I think at our heyday, we were probably 220, 225. We have an older population. We have a mostly blue-collar city. However, and I love talking about this because I'm a military man, but as you look into the Pacific and you look at great power conflict, you only build aircraft carriers in one spot. And I know that right now we're about to basically double the fleet, right? We need more ships. And I know we split submarines about, I don't know, is it a third is you, a third is me?
And a third is Groton, Connecticut.
Yeah, so
but they're not here, so we can forget.
Exactly. So I built every aircraft carrier and 40%. And 40% of submarines, right? So that means for what I want is right now we're working a deal with the Navy, but the future is I want 10,000 sailors to Homeport and Newport News. That'd be huge for my downtown, just like a lot of cities. When white flight happened in the 60s, my downtown emptied out. And so if I get 10,000 sailors plus their families homeported in my downtown, that would be huge for me. On a personal note, now that I'm the sort of education mayor, I would love all of our schools to be accredited. Right now, I'm not sure about other cities, but we're basically at pre-segregation levels, right? There's just based on income, there's basically the black school and the white school. I would love to see more more mixing, because that's what the world is, right? I was born in Japan. My parents are military. I've seen the world. My friends reflect the world, but I don't really see that in Newport News. We're so segregated by income and by our districts. So,
are you segregated? Tell us just about the actual makeup of the city and the segregation. Is it physically segregated? And here in Chicago, we have the south and west sides, and living there, you have a very different life, and it's a matter of numerous years taken off of your life when you talk about health.
and decades.
Really, I mean, it's and how is that? I know cities are made up differently. How is that for you? And how is that getting better? Is that something it sounds like you're planning to work on that?
Yeah, I would say the entire team's working on it. Newport News is, I think we're like 26 miles long and like a mile and a half wide. So we're like a banana, right? Yeah. North, central, and south. And so the south is your predominantly African American community. Your central is your more business class. That's where city center is. And the north is very transient, very military. And just like I said, downtown is where there's a coal terminal, where that community has been redlined and has been underserved for such a long time. And I'm very mindful. I'm the first Black mayor that did not grow up downtown. I grew up in the suburbs, quite honestly. And so I'm just mindful of that community and make sure that it's top of mind. But 8 years from now or 7 years from now, I want us to be the center of excellence for shipbuilding in the world, which with AUKUS and with all this foreign investment, we are in prime position to be the best place to build ships in the entire world. I want a city that reflects the entire diversity of it. And I want our schools to be on par with Northern Virginia and all the DC elites. I would love our schools to be at that level.
Excellent.
One of the most challenging things of mayors, and just hearing all of us talking, is we've got these great long-term plans, but we also have things that happen day to day, whether it's the shooting that Mayor Jones described or that I deal with far too often in Louisville, or other natural disasters that happen. We had a house in Louisville that was discovered to basically be a hoarder's house, and he happened to be a chemist that liked explosives, and we had to bring in federal authorities to even figure out what to do at the home. There are all these wild things that are happening, unpredictable every day, that continue to try to get it off. So one of the biggest challenges that all of us have is staying focused on those long-term goals while dealing with the short-term and immediate crisis, and then also seizing the opportunity when opportunity arises. So, for example, in Louisville, Kentucky, earlier this year, we saw that the Sundance Film Festival was thinking about choosing a new home location for its film festival, the most prestigious film festival in the world. And so we jumped on that. And now we're one of 6 finalist cities that's still in the hunt to possibly be the new location for the Sundance Film Festival. If that can happen, that would be transformative.
And, so you're inviting us all down there for that, right?
Of course.
After we all come down for the Kentucky Derby.
Let's get it first, and then we'll send out the invitation second. But knowing where there are opportunities that fit with your city, that can truly transform your city, I think that's a big job for all of us to keep our eyes open for.
Great. The name of our podcast here that we're kind of launching today is called Be in the Room, and you all are in the room. The part of City Club's history is asking questions. So I would like, if anyone does have a question, it's a small enough group where we can, and Dan McLaughlin, longtime mayor, I see his hand, and I'll ask him to start, and then I'll repeat the question so we can record it, and then hopefully we got a few more minutes. And Mayor McLaughlin, what's your question? So Dan McLaughlin asking Mayor Jones if you could mention 1 or 2 things specifically that he did to reduce gun violence.
So during the time that I was in uniform as a Marine, I was infantry officer. So like I know how to handle rough men.
Hey, Ty.
Oh, you're fine. And so what I did was I actually visited every single precinct. And every single recruit class I would wrestle with. So like you have the mayor next to you. And so during ground fighting, like I want to wrestle the biggest person, right? And I think, all the recruits know that. We're able to get more people. I talked to my chief. And I think saying it in front of 1,000 people as state of the city, saying that like we will reduce our gun violence or I will leave. I think people are like, the mayor is serious about this, and it was all hands on deck. And it was more than just the police chief, right? Because I think the police, police is usually right of bang. We need to get to left of bang. And so that's churches, that's schools, that's Boys and Girls Club. So we made it an entire thing of all hands on deck. We have to invest into our youth. And granted, it could be a leading indicator, but I firmly believe that we're going to go down next year as well because we're giving the kids something to do. We brought back the summer jobs program. We have Friday night basketball right now. I have basically 24/7 rec centers on the weekends. I think I'm a public policy guy. I think the public policy is there, and no need to recreate the wheel. Other cities have Friday night nets and 24/7 rec centers. We never really had that in Newport News. So I think all of that going together really was able to push down the crime rate.
And I'll mention that at City Club we're really dedicating to gun violence. Is clearly an issue in Chicago as well, and I'd like to offer to invite you to come back specifically to talk more about that. We are working with the Joyce Foundation and rolling out a 3-part series that I imagine will be 6 to 8 to 10 parts. But really, we'd love to dig into that further as it's something that affects every city, and